Well, welcome back to GloMiNe 2024. We're about to start session number 2 on culture, environment, ecology, and ethics. We have a great set of talks coming up from work with communities, the epigenomic origins of diabetes, to microbiome ecology, and also international law. So without further introduction, I will introduce the first speaker of the session, Valarie Jernigan from University of Oklahoma in the United States. And she will be talking about partnering with indigenous communities to support traditional indigenous foodways. Thank you, Valarie. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Am I muted? Are you able to hear me? You can hear me and see my screen. Perfect.
Your screen, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to present. My name is Valarie Jernigan. I'm a professor of medicine at Oklahoma State University, where I direct the Center for Indigenous Health Research and Policy. And today I'm going to talk about the Center for Indigenous Innovation and Health Equity Research. It's a bit different than the presentations presented earlier, but the planning committee thought that this was an important aspect to discuss. It's very focused on the community. So I hope this information is helpful. Let's see. The CIHE, as we call it, Center for Indigenous Innovation and Health Equity, is a new research center. We were just funded for the following 5 years. We had 2 years of planning and startup that occurred, and now we're moving into a larger study. The purpose of the CIHE is to identify and support community prioritized initiatives that restore traditional indigenous food systems and practices to promote health and wellness. And we're guided by a community-based participatory research orientation, as well as indigenous research methods and indigenous ways of knowing. And we use 3 strategies to accomplish the CIHE goals: education and training, research and evaluation, and dissemination, to really share the information that we learn and hopefully scale it to implementation with other communities. These are our partner locations. We started the CIHE with 2 communities in Oklahoma, the Osage Nation and the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. You can see those communities with a yellow current partners mark there. And then 2 communities in Alaska, 1 in Anchorage and 1 in Fairbanks, Alaska. And we partner with the South Central Foundation in Anchorage and the University of Alaska Fairbanks in Fairbanks. We then added, because we had a wait list of additional communities who wanted to join and be part of CIHE. So we were very excited about the level of community interest in being part of this initiative. We added 5 additional sites. We added Nome Eskimo community in Alaska, which is the terminology that they use there to describe their community in Nome. We added the Yurok tribe in Northern California, Indian Healthcare Santa Clara Valley, which is an urban Native community living in San Jose, California. We added Turtle Mountain Community College, the Turtle Mountain Chippewa community there in North Dakota, and Dream of Wild Health, which is an urban Native organization that supports urban Native community in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and surrounding areas. So we have quite a diverse representation of different environments, different communities. And because we're focused on restoring and supporting traditional indigenous food systems, you can see that there's a great diversity in food systems from the plains, southern plains, northern plains, the Pacific Northwest coast, and Alaska. The framework for the intervention research that we're doing is Indigenous food sovereignty, and it's based on the right and responsibility of Indigenous people to healthy and culturally appropriate foods produced through our own traditional indigenous foodways and practices. This is not a theoretical concept that I or other researchers invented. Food sovereignty is really a community-led movement that supports indigenous communities to really have greater control over their food systems and protect their traditional food ways. And by doing so, it reduces reliance on packaged and processed and fast foods. And this movement addresses the need for nutrition and health equity approaches. And so from the perspective of public health researchers, it's a very, very exciting movement. And it also, from the perspective of indigenous communities, really strengthens sovereignty and self-determination when it comes to health and wellness. For our education and training component, we offer in the first year and a half really intensive co-learning activities to build research capacity and help to improve local food systems and make those connections between food systems and health. So we have monthly workshops that are focused on topics that these communities would like to learn more about. And the topics that have been selected include food sovereignty and health. So examples of how that concept food sovereignty is actualized across different communities, as well as community-based participatory research and indigenous evaluation. One of the biggest interests that we've had emerge is data sovereignty. And so we've done one workshop on that, and we plan a couple more intensive workshops. And there is great interest around the clinical outcomes measures that may be of use to these communities in assessing the impact of these interventions. They're interested in changes in, dietary intake. They're interested in preservation of cultural knowledge, transmission of cultural knowledge across the generations. But there's also great interest in looking at changes in hemoglobin A1C levels among diabetics, for instance, changes in blood pressure, potentially changes in BMI over time. And there's great interest in looking at the microbiome and health. And so we wrote a special supplement that we've published. It just came out in November, and that's in the journal Health Promotion Practice. It's about 12 articles that describe the different initiative projects. And then we also held an annual food sovereignty and health conference the first couple of years. Our last conference was just in September, and we plan to hold another one next September. We're working at this point to partner with First Nations communities in Canada to co-lead that symposium. We intend to have a focus on microbiome research as one of our half-day workshop intensives because of the level of interest in this field. For research and evaluation, as I said, we focus on building community capacity, and that involves a heavy emphasis on what the communities are interested in doing as far as their interventions. Measures that evaluate priorities for these communities and that support sustainability of the interventions over time. And example outcomes that communities are interested in, as I said, strengthening community relationships with food and traditional foodways. There's a problem of food insecurity on many of our reservations and in many of our rural and urban communities. And so that's a great interest. Reducing chronic disease risk factors and addressing the huge gaps in data and knowledge that we have on Indigenous communities. In the US, all of our research to inform the dietary guidelines for Americans and most of our science focused on health outcomes does not include American Indian, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders in our data sets. We're categorized as other, and so it excludes a lot of important knowledge around what we're eating and how we are consuming these foods, as well as the complex relationships that we have with our traditional foodways. So there's been some effort to really address those data gaps, and our center initiative, collecting data across these 9 sites, as well as a co-center led in Hawaii, is also focusing on addressing these gaps. I included a couple of examples here. This is one of our examples of our projects, the Choctaw Nation Growing Hope project. This project is implemented in the southeastern part of Oklahoma and the Choctaw tribe. The reservation maintains seeds that were carried over from the original homelands in the southeastern part of the United States on the Trail of Tears. The women would sow these seeds in their clothing and carry them through the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma, where we were relocated. And those seeds have been disseminated to tribal members, along with the information about the families that carried the seeds and maintained them over time. And then information on how to grow them, how to support Choctaw traditional gardens, how to cook the foods that have been grown from the seeds, and basically food sovereignty initiatives that start within your own, backyard. And it is restoring the Choctaw traditional agriculture practices that really are central to our community. We plan on evaluating changes in access to fruit and vegetables, transmission of traditional knowledge. We're doing surveys and interviews, and we're in the process of planning some clinical data collection as well for that project. This is an example of another community prioritized initiative, the Osage Nation Mobile Market. The Osage Nation has invested a great deal in their food sovereignty initiative by repurposing a significant amount of land to build the Harvest Land Farm, which is a farm that supports fruits and vegetables, as well as they have a meat processing facility that processes meat. And the aim is to strengthen the food sovereignty within this community and reduce reliance on external sources of food, which became quite a significant challenge during the COVID pandemic. And as part of their initiative, they have developed a mobile market initiative that travels to the various places within the reservation that are quite far from the farm, and where folks have limited access to transportation and therefore healthy foods. And this is an example of one of their mobile market vans. And they're in the process now of looking at the impact of that initiative on changes in dietary intake within this community, as well as some additional clinical measures. This is a complicated slide, but you can find more in the publications I mentioned. It's in the journal Health Promotion Practice. And it looks at some of the relationships between food sovereignty and health that we are assessing, both the activities across these 9 sites, as well as their proximal and distal effects. The methods and measures that we are administering within this initiative are outlined broadly here, and our data collected include traditional foods and foodways. So what are the activities that the communities are implementing, the changes in knowledge that they're looking at? Cultural efficacy and community connectedness are additional measures that the communities have identified as being of interest. Food security and food sovereignty changes, self-reported and objective health outcomes. And there is interest in collecting microbiome as well as additional environmental health data. And so we're focused this year on learning about what that would entail and how that might be implemented across these 9 sites. The key factors that are of great importance when engaging with these communities for microbiome research have been outlined here, and basically much more education on the potential risks and benefits have been asked for within the communities. How does this work? What would this entail? What are the risks, and how do we understand the benefits? Identifying community leadership and involvement in all stages of the process has been a great priority. If we engage in this kind of research, can our communities lead this research and be involved at every stage? Data sovereignty, who will maintain the data and how will we have access to it? How will we benefit from this data? And a need to educate not just leadership and decision makers, but broadly community members, so that they can understand better the value of this kind of research to the communities. And with that slide, I will conclude. Thank you so much.